Hello everyone, welcome back to another installment of the Wednesday Writing Workshop. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah L. Webb. This week's topic is what is healing? Yes, so this is Colorism Healing. So as much as you hear me talk about colorism, it's also a big part of my mission to talk about healing. How do we heal from colorism? Before we jump into the topic today though, make sure you say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from, especially if this is your first time joining. Let me know what the weather's like where you are, how your day has been so far. See how I rhymed that? What's your favorite color? Mine is yellow. If you notice, a little fun fact about me, why I always use yellow hearts is because my favorite color is yellow. So there you go, a little fun fact. 105 degrees in Dallas. Jendell Crutch, Trey Lorraine, Arizona, hot. What's up, Trey? I said I was going to give you a shout out. How you doing? Thank you for joining. So we got some Southwest folks tuning in. Is hella hot, as they say. What's up? Love it, love it. Come on in, y'all. Come on in. We're doing our usual introductions. I'm having people let me know where they're tuning in from, what the weather's like where they are. So far we just have hot, which is good, right? Because we've been having some storms and some, tornadic like weather, tornadic. I don't know if that's a word. So we'll take a little sunshine, even if it is smoldering hot. Some announcements, y'all, as we come in. Stephanie Jackson, welcome back, Stephanie Jackson. Always a pleasure. You say, yes, it is fire. Currently in Louisiana, and this is Better Call Saul, but based in Manhattan. Louisiana or LA? Because I'm from Louisiana, so when I see capital LA, I automatically think Louisiana. Germany, what's up, Cherizelle? Germany in the house. I can't wait to visit Germany. Los Angeles, gotcha. I can't wait to visit Germany and all these other places when this pandemic lightens up and we can be mobile again. Yeah, y'all got to send me y'all location so I can come by and swing through and say hello to everybody in person. JB1710, hot day in Texas. Yes. So let me get my little announcement sheet. I do this every Wednesday, right? So I don't know how many people are familiar. I know I see my regulars. I see some regulars in the building. So thank y'all for tuning back in. But for those of you who don't know, this is every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. These are recorded. So if you ever miss one, you can catch them on playback on YouTube, Facebook, or IGTV, right? Also, if you have to leave early or if you tune in late, you can always catch what you missed in one of the recordings. Next topic coming up is self-care, which is going to be a good follow-up to today's topic about healing and what is healing, right? Also, I have the Q&A feature set up. So if you'd like to share with the audience on Instagram how you define healing, what healing is to you, you can click the little question box. So not the comment box, but next to the comment box, there's a question mark inside of little boxes. So if you put your definition of healing into that box, I'll be able to show it on the screen with your handle, right? So I can't wait to get into that. On Friday, I'll be doing a live interview with Stephanie Brown. I mentioned her. She's the visual artist and photographer, does a lot of work on colorism, was part of a previous writing contest, was part of the art exhibit that I did, and a lot of her work deals with skin bleaching and do not bleach, okay? So definitely tune in for that interview. Stephanie's a homegirl. Office hours appointments. So I've been getting some really good office hours appointments. These are one-on-one mentoring sessions that I offer. You can check out colorismhealing.com to learn more. Those have been going excellent so far. I've enjoyed meeting new people, right, from around the world and having one-on-one conversations with them about colorism, but also other areas of their artistic endeavors and that sort of thing. I did just launch a Patreon page, right? So if you're looking for a way to support Colorism Healing more consistency, check out patreon.com/colorism healing. Right now, it's just the basic tier, but I do look to create and curate some Patreon only content. And then also there's also just basic donations at Cash App or Venmo at Colorism Healing. So again, let me wave at folks. I have a thing about trying to wave at everybody on Instagram anyway, and I'm gonna wave like this to all my Facebook folks. So what is healing? Let me start with the responses that have come in via Instagram, right? So I'm gonna put some of those on the screen, just in the order that they appeared, right? That people responded. So piercings in pineapples, also known as Shayna, also Slayna, right? Says that healing is doing the inner work daily to ensure that those after us go through less, right? And what I love about piercings and pineapples on Instagram's response is that it's active, right? It talks about healing as work, as inner work, internal work, right? And it's doing, right? It's active. But also I like the intention behind healing, right? We heal ourselves so that we don't continue to perpetuate these toxic cycles and these cycles of trauma to generations that come before us, right? We've talked about this in the live on colorism in families and how so many of us that experience colorism at home, it was via adults in our lives who had not faced their colorism wounds or just their wounds in general, right? And so they taught certain values that were harmful, right? Or they perpetuated colorism. So doing that inner work so we can feel better and so that we can end these generational cycles for sure. So thank you, piercings and pineapples. There's a question coming through. It says, are you on the Power Up Your Patreon course that's running right now? So I don't have any Patreon courses running right now. I've just literally just launched the page so that people can get in where they fit in. And so I haven't started putting out Patreon only content. And so actually what I'm doing is collecting ideas, brainstorming ideas for what people would like. And this is a response to Naturally High Hair on Instagram. So if you are interested in a course, if that's something that you would like to see from my Patreon page, I can take note of that, right? I definitely have ideas for courses in mind, but I've gotten different kinds of feedback when it comes to Patreon and whether or not people like courses or downloadable content or that sort of thing. It's for creators. Okay, so I will check out Power Up, definitely. Thank you, Naturally High Hair. So I have a couple more responses in terms of how other people are defining colorism. So I'm starting with the responses I got in my Instagram stories, right? So the next one comes from another Colorism Healing supporter and community member, K Wrights Official, also known as Kashish, right? So piercings and pineapples is the comment I just featured previously, is featured in the 2020 Colorism Healing Writing Anthology. Yes, so you can read her work there. K Wrights Official, I think, was featured in the 2017 anthology. She's based in India, and she actually recently did an IGTV about her experiences writing about colorism. And so she defines healing for herself as working on taking the voice of your experience / memories from your soul to the world and to heart, right? And so again, what I love about Kashish's definition is that it starts with the word working on your healing, working on taking the voice of your experience and memories. I also like the idea of voice, giving voice to your experiences and memories. So again, if you watch her IGTV, she's talking about writing about colorism. And one of the reasons why I have the writing contest in the first place is because so many people have not had a space to give voice to their experiences with colorism. And I think that's definitely one of the first steps to healing colorism wounds, is simply giving voice to it, simply acknowledging the fact that you have been hurt at some point by colorism, right? I'm going to get more into that because we live in a culture where it's really cool to be unbothered, when in fact some of us are deeply bothered and we're just afraid to admit it. But I'll get to that a little bit later. So Naturally High Hair is saying, I think you'd like it. We're learning about what to create for our patrons. Ah, excellent. You're welcome. I'm on the free course right now. It's great. No need to reply to this now. Gotcha. Okay. Hey, she's mighty, mighty. Okay. So again, both Shayna and Kashis are talking about colorism as healing from colorism as an active process, right? Something that we're doing, it's inner work. They both use the word work in some form to define what healing is for them, right? And so I want us to keep that in mind as this conversation continues. If you would like to share your perspective on healing and what it means to you, go ahead and drop a comment. I'm going to keep going. So this came from an account called Colorism Chronicles on Instagram, right? This piece here. And they defined healing for themselves as feeling the pain we refuse to acknowledge because we had to be strong, right? And I love this, Colorism Chronicles, because it's hard to heal, right? We can't heal if we're not willing to feel, right? You have to feel it in order to heal it. Y'all know how it goes, right? And so feeling the pain we refuse to acknowledge because we have to be strong, right? And this is a mandate of Black women in particular, right? And Black men even, right? That we have to be strong, that we can't be vulnerable, that we can't be soft, that we can't be fragile. And this goes back to what I was saying about how the trend these days is to say, well, I'm unbothered and nothing can touch me. Nothing bothers me. I don't care about anything, you know. But in reality, to be fully human means that you are vulnerable to experiencing pain and hurt, right? And so the mandate to be strong is really overrated. And the necessity to be strong is part of our reality, right? So there's something to say about being strong, but I think we have to think about what strength is a little differently. Strength is not, oh, nothing bothers me. Strength is not, I never cry, right? Strength is resiliency. Strength is being able to bend without breaking, right? Strength is being able to ask for help when you need it. Strength is having the courage to show up in all of your humanity, even your hurt or wounded humanity, right? Duane says it's a coping mechanism. Absolutely, that's a great way to describe it. It's a coping mechanism, right? It's a way to try to avoid feeling the pain. But we know that if we cut ourselves off to feeling pain, we also cut ourselves off to feeling joy, feeling love, feeling passion and peace, right? And all the other positive emotions, right? So when we try to numb ourselves, and this is coming from a lot of the work that Brene Brown does on vulnerability, when we try to numb ourselves to the difficult emotions, we end up numbing ourselves to the beauty of life as well. In order to achieve the highs of life, we have to be willing to risk the lows of life, if that makes sense. And so let's remember that we say the strong Black woman, for example, that myth is harmful, but I think it's because of how we're defining strength. If we define strength as unbreakable, if we define strength as impermeable, then yes, that's what's harmful about it. But when we recognize that strength doesn't mean you can never be hurt, or strength doesn't mean you never get tired or that you never need help, right? And so that's what Colorism Chronicles is saying in their comment, is that we should stop saying that because you cry, you're weak, or you're not strong because you're crying, or that you're not strong because you're leaning on someone in the moment, right? And actually, it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable, a lot of courage to be vulnerable. Okay, and there's one more from Sienna, also featured in the 2020 Colorism Healing Writing Anthology and a regular to the Wednesday writing workshops. Sienna has been hanging in there with these Wednesday writing workshops since the beginning. Back in the day when I had like one viewer it was usually Sienna. So now I'm up to like, I fluctuate between like 10 to 20 viewers, depending on Instagram. And then Facebook is kind of like anywhere from 2 to 10. But hey, there she is. Yay. So Sienna defined healing as incorporating introspection and acceptance of the true self into everyday life. And I think that is such a beautiful definition. The introspection piece is huge, and y'all know I've done, videos on introspection and journaling and how important that is for healing. The healing process is not possible if we're not willing to be introspective. And I think a lot of times, I'm going to talk about this next week with the self-care video as well, but a lot of times we try so hard to escape from our thoughts and our feelings and from the difficult emotions. I'm calling them difficult rather than bad or negative, right? Because they aren't necessarily negative. It's a perspective thing, right? But they can be uncomfortable and difficult and painful emotions. So a lot of times we reject introspection, or we shy away from introspection because we're afraid of what we might find. We're afraid that it's going to be painful or hurtful, or that we might end up crying in bed at night, right? But it's necessary for healing. It really is. And then the acceptance of the true self into everyday life. I love the word acceptance. I hope y'all are taking notes. But if you don't take notes, again, it's recorded, so you can play it back if you need to. But that word acceptance. So I have done like various forms of therapy in my lifetime. And when I was in my doctorate program, I did group therapy at LSU. And so one of my goals for group therapy was to practice acceptance. Practicing acceptance. And a lot of times we think healing is struggle or control or fighting for something. But for me, and this is just how it feels in my experience of healing, it feels more like letting go. Healing feels more like acceptance. It feels more like surrendering to the process, right? Not trying to control my emotions, not trying to stop myself from crying. I think is a very tangible example of that, right? I'm trying not to cry. I'm trying not to cry, right? That fight, that effort, that struggle. I think healing for me has felt like the opposite of that. It's letting myself cry. It's accepting the fact that, okay, here come the tears. Here they come. Jandelle on Facebook is saying, healing is clearing out the infection of colorism and using the balm of blackness to restore what was wounded. Hold up now. Hold up. Child. Okay, so Jandelle, the comment I'm reading right now is my sister. And I did not know my sister was a poet. Jay, where you coming from with these like fire bars, these fire lines? Sienna says, giving into who you really are. Yeah, and I'm going to leave that comment up because that element of authenticity, oh, it's so important. It's so at the core of what healing has meant for me, right? Being comfortable in my own skin, being comfortable with my quirkiness, being comfortable with how I articulate or not articulate my words. So yeah, one measure of how healed we are is our courage, our ability to show up as our true selves. And I think that's, something that's coming through in Sienna's comment is, if I'm still afraid to be myself, that means I have a lot more work to do in my healing journey, right? Jandelle's comment, Jan Dale, Mary Crutchfield, Dr. Crutchfield, Dr. C. I'm going to repeat that. Healing is clearing out the infection of colorism. So using the medical metaphor there and using the balm of blackness. Y'all, can we write down balm of blackness? I should be like, I need to write that somewhere. The balm of blackness. To restore what was wounded. I also like the word restore. So everybody who's left comments, y'all are doing the work for me, right? Y'all are like teaching for me. I'm just reading your comments and commenting on your comments. And that's what I love about my people. That's what I love about the community of friends and family that I have found online is that, whew, y'all be feeding my soul. Y'all do. Y'all be feeding my soul. And I hope that I can reciprocate. I hope that I reciprocate. But the balm of blackness, and I hear people say, actually, I think I shared this on my Instagram stories. I hope I shared it. But people are saying we love being black. We just hate racism, right? And so it's not being black that's the problem. It is the oppression. It's the system of anti-blackness. It's the system of white supremacist ideology that's the problem. But the essence of blackness is actually very healing, right? To embrace that blackness, to embrace all of how you show up as a black person or an indigenous person or, a black or an indigenous person, right? And seeing that acceptance, like Sienna was saying, acceptance of that heritage, acceptance of that legacy, acceptance of those features, acceptance of that style, of that comportment, of that demeanor, of that culture, right, is actually very healing. And a lot of people are wounded because they've been pushing away their heritage. They've been trying to escape their legacy. They've been trying to escape the ancestral identity that they were born with, right, in order to approximate whiteness, in order to strive and struggle to get closer to what white society deems as normal or acceptable, right? And so when we accept that I'm not white and I'm not going to fight and twist myself into a pretzel to please white people or to try to appear like white people, right? Because my DNA, right, my cultural practices, my indigenous and African roots are actually the place where I'm going to find my healing. I'm not going to find my healing in this white mainstream, culture, right? I might make money there if I, try to give in or appease that, right? I might gain some, form of corrupt power and trying to play into white supremacist ideology, right? But it separates me from myself. It alienates me from myself as a person of color, as a black person. It separates me from myself if I try to strive for what I think is going to help me progress in white society. Okay, so I love these. Let me check and see if okay, good. So I think I'm just going to leave up Sienna's quote because I like this feature. I like the feature that Instagram has where you can put up comments on the screen. So I'm going to leave that up. I'm going to add some additional points. And I wrote these in my little notebook, right? So I'm not as organized. Usually I have to type it out. But I was at the park today. You should check out my Instagram stories because I went to the park this morning as part of my own healing process. And if you have any additional thoughts on what healing is for you, how you define it, what it feels like to you, what does healing sound like to you, what does it look like to you, please drop that in the comments. That's always the fun of going live. But I always say, right, that I call it Colorism Healing on purpose. That was very intentional because I didn't want to just talk about colorism and raise awareness about what it was without offering people something to work on, right? Some way to deal with the feelings that come up once we start talking about colorism, because colorism is a very triggering topic for a lot of people, right? So going hand in hand with asking people to face this subject, there has to be a discussion about what we can do to cope in healthy ways, right? How we can overcome and heal ourselves. And then it's not called Colorism Healed, past tense. It's not Colorism Healed. Ta-da, you're healed, magic wand, you're done. You never have to think about this again. It's called Colorism Healing, ING, if I can be an English professor for a moment. Present tense, ongoing action verb, a gerund, right? So it is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing journey. And for me, I've had to ask myself, y'all, because y'all know I'm not just out here talking at screens for the fun of it. I'm in it myself. I practicing and trying to grow and get better every day myself. So one of the things I've asked myself, right, is how can I heal my wounds around colorism when I'm still being triggered and still being attacked and still experiencing colorism, right? So that's one of my questions, right? And one thing that a lot of the people I talk to have to deal with, right, or confront, is that you're asking me to heal from something, from a wound that's still being inflicted in the present. The wounds are still being inflicted in the present. Watching TV, walking down the street, going to work, going shopping, I don't know, running at the park. I made a Facebook post on my personal Facebook page about seeing this huge Trump flag, right? And how like that is a personal attack. It's an attack in my physical environment, right? I'm being reminded that I don't belong, that I'm not welcome, right? And that the state, the federal government sanctions and supports my antagonizers, right? So as Black people, as Indigenous people, whether it's because of racism and anti-Blackness and white supremacist ideology, whether it's because of colorism in particular, or any other form of oppression, right? Our environment, the people, some of the people around us are still going to be perpetuating these harms. There's still going to be racist people. There's still going to be colorist people and sexist people and homophobic people and transphobic people and anti-Black people in our world. And so the lesson I had to learn, and I'm not the first person to say this, right? I think about a lot of things India Ari has said, and she also talks about colorism, is that my healing is my responsibility. And I can't wait. I don't have to wait, but I also cannot wait for the world to change before I get committed and serious about my own healing. So you can ask yourself, am I doomed to being miserable if the world never changes? If the world never changes, are we doomed to be perpetually wounded and in pain, right? And I don't think we are. I think we have agency and power no matter what someone else is doing. And this goes even to like interpersonal relationships, right? A friendship, a breakup, with a significant other or a partner, or a betrayal from a coworker, right? So not even talking about systems of oppression, but you don't have to wait for your friend to apologize for you to practice forgiveness and to heal yourself and to move on and to take care of yourself. You don't have to wait for your ex to ever realize the error of their ways before you move on, before you do your own healing and grow from those experiences. I'm going to pause because Stephanie Jackson on Facebook has left a comment. Stephanie says, healing is becoming aware of colorism. Becoming aware, I like that. And looking back at the undiscovered wounds that may have shaped us to who we are and how we can correct that with how we raise our children. So Stephanie, some things I love about your reflection on healing is that becoming aware of colorism is part of that healing process. So many people, they have cognitive dissonance and there's like, blind spot, right? Where something is in your environment and you don't have conscious awareness of it yet. And I think that awareness is part of what it takes to catalyze the healing process. So I'm glad you said that. But then undiscovered wounds. Stephanie, that's so deep, sis. Undiscovered wounds that are impacting our present without us even knowing it. Without us even knowing. We say if someone seems to have an irrational reaction to something, that they're usually responding to situations from the past, right? A lot of times we're not even responding or reacting to the present situation, right? But these like really intense moments of anger or being triggered or being extremely sad about something in the present are actually also responses to historical events, as in our personal history, right? That we have not confronted or dealt with or fully healed from. We are responsible for how we carry ourselves. How people feel about me is none of my business. Absolutely. Yeah, how other people's opinions of me are not my business, right? And then, so your comment reminds me of Shayna's comment, the first comment I put up on Instagram, and I'll go back to that, is that doing it for the future generations, right? So part of that healing, when we heal ourselves, y'all, You'd be surprised at how it ripples out into our environment. When we work on and are committed to our personal healing, we can do so much restoration and recovery for our communities and for our families, right? I have come to believe recently that in healing myself, I'm also healing for my ancestors who could not get to the next level in their own journey, right? I definitely believe just like we have generational trauma, we can have generational healing, right? So let's focus on that as well, right? Part of the generational trauma is rectified by generational healing, right? So definitely for yourself, focus on your own healing, but just know that you being committed to your own healing is going to help your family, is going to help your legacy in the future, but it's also going to be a balm and a healing serum for your ancestors who are, present in their own way, even today. Trey, Lorraine, spot on. Michelle, hand claps. Okay, so because I wrote these in my notebook, my notes are not as organized as they usually are. I said I was going to come back to the whole unbothered trend, right? The trend of being unbothered and how it's overrated. I think one of the things, and this is getting into topics broader than colorism specifically, but we're talking about healing today. I think so, if we just allow people to cry, if we just allow ourselves to cry and stop telling little boys that they're punks if they cry, the world would be such a better place. We would be so much better off. If we stop telling people, stop telling ourselves, stop telling young men and boys in particular, don't be soft, don't cry. That's for girls, don't do that. Man up, man up. Stop telling people to man up as if crying is not manning up, right? I don't know. But the same thing with women, right? Even women, especially Black women and other women of color, there's shame around crying. There is real shame around crying. Even, and this is when I know it's toxic, is that I can understand not wanting to cry in certain settings or certain places, but I know I've talked to people who are uncomfortable crying even when they're alone. So one of my hopes, if anyone watching this, if anyone who sees this is afraid of that sort of waterfall of emotion, one of the best things you can do for your healing is to let yourself cry. Okay, and I'm not gonna cry on this live. Although I've been brought almost to tears so many times on my live streams, especially my book launches. And every time we have a book launch on YouTube, y'all, they just get me. But yeah, so in terms of healing, I think just purging it out, letting the physical chemical release of these things, because trauma is chemical, right? Trauma is biological, right? I have this book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's back there, you can't see it, but the body keeps the score. Trauma is physical, and so we have to incorporate the body in releasing pain from our body in terms of that emotional healing. What I wanted to say too about healing is that you have to want it. So this is an additional comment. You have to want to heal. Toni K. Bambara in Salt Eaters, one of her characters asks another character, are you sure you want to be well? Are you sure you want it? Because we can be attached to the pain. Now I'm going to go slow here because I don't want to lose anybody. We can be attached to the chaos and the cycle of pain because our ego identifies with it. It's how our ego identifies itself. And without that pain, who would I be? Who would I be if I wasn't bitter about how someone or a group of people hurt me? What kinds of things would I start to say if I let go and allow myself to heal? How would I behave if I allowed myself to heal, if I surrendered to my own healing, right? And so our ego, right, the toxic side of our ego can over-identify with being in the position of the victim and being able to blame someone else for where we are in life, being able to blame someone else. It's more comfortable to do that than to take responsibility for our own power, because you do have power. You have immense power. And some of us are afraid of our own power. And so it's easier to play small, right? Rejecting your healing, resisting your healing is a way to play small. And so ask yourself that. How would I behave? Who would I be? I don't know who I would be. Who would I be if I started to heal, right? If I gave up identifying with the pain and with the drama and with the bitterness and the anger. What would happen if I grew from it instead of stewed in it? So we can grow from these things instead of stewing in them. It's a slight perspective shift, right? To grow from something instead of stewing in it. And so I'm not advocating for toxic positivity, because again, that is the other extreme, right? To pretend like nothing ever hurts you, to pretend like nothing ever bothers you, is the other extreme of allowing anything and everything to come in and have control over your inner peace, right? And for me, peace is the name of the game. That's one measure of my own healing, right? In terms of marking my trajectory in the healing journey is how peaceful I'm able to be, right, in my day-to-day life. How much inner peace do I have despite what's going on around me? It's an indicator. It's an indicator for yourself. So if you're asking yourself, how can I know if I'm growing? How can I know if I'm, making progress in the healing? Is you can say, well, I'm starting to have more and more days where I feel at peace, right? And then I'll say this too about healing. I talk about it being an ongoing process. I talk about it being a journey, a daily practice. And so just like we keep Band-Aids in the cabinet, because as humans, we're always vulnerable to injury, physical injury, is the same reason we need to have these consistent practices for our spiritual healing, for our emotional healing as well, because as humans, we're vulnerable to emotional and psychic injury as well, right? So just like we know to dial 911 if we're in physical trouble, we have to have things in place for ourselves when we are experiencing some kind of emotional or psychic or spiritual injury as well. Going back to the idea that our healing is our responsibility and it's not dependent on others, is the idea that if we do something, if we do X, then we can convince someone else to do Y, right? And that goes back to acknowledging what we can't control. We can't control other people's attitudes or perceptions, right? We can't manipulate people into loving us. We can't manipulate people into accepting us, right? And even going back to Sienna's comment about accepting our own selves, accepting our true selves, right? Means that we're not going to manipulate other people, right, to try and accept us, because that's not our authentic self. The last thing I'll say about healing for now, because this is an ongoing conversation as always, is that it requires forgiveness. And so this is related to something I had a realization again, in my own healing journey, because I know for me it was still hard, for example, to like watch certain TV shows and things like that, is that I have to forgive the world. A couple of things about forgiveness. I have to forgive the world. I have to forgive society for its colorism. Now, this might sound counterintuitive, right? Because I see in conversations about colorism, it's where there is a danger in holding a grudge against society. There's a danger in holding a grudge against the culture for being colorist, right? And so not even thinking about specific individuals in my life who have been colorists, but just the culture. No specific person. I have to practice forgiveness for the culture. I have to forgive society. I have to forgive the world. I have to forgive all the groups of people I've never met that I never will meet who are colorists, in order to make progress in my own healing journey, right? And I came up with this acronym on a recent podcast that I did. I didn't come up with it on the podcast, but I shared it on the podcast, is that we have to go far to forgive, right? So far, F-A-R. Far, F is for facing it, A is for accepting it, and R is for releasing it, right? So forgiveness requires facing it, accepting it, and releasing it. The facing it part goes to the comment that we have to feel the pain. We have to acknowledge that we've been hurt. We have to have the courage to say, man, whew, I feel some type of way about all this colorism stuff. I experienced it. I'm facing the fact that I experienced it. I'm facing the fact that I am hurt by it. The acceptance piece is not condoning it. Acceptance in this case does not mean condoning it or allowing it to happen, but the acceptance means acknowledging what you don't have control over. What I'm talking about here is acceptance of what you do and don't have control over. You only have control over yourself, your actions, your attitudes, your beliefs, your words. No matter what you do, other people have the sovereignty over their own lives to think and do as they choose, and we can't control that, right? And then the release of it is I am going to move on. That's where the moving on part comes from. Not that it doesn't affect me, but I am going to not carry the burden of it anymore. I'm not going to carry the burden of it. I'm going to let go of that burden of being bitter. Being bitter, being sad, being angry is a burden. And I know because I have been there. I have been in the swamps of bitterness and anger and sadness. And that's not to say I don't still get angry or sad, right? But I am getting better at releasing it when it comes up. I'm getting better at going far to forgive, facing it, accepting it, and releasing it. So y'all know, I got to leave y'all with some homework and some affirmations. If you liked or appreciated anything you heard today, please like the video, share the video, make sure you're following and subscribing on all platforms. If you're kind and thinking about a financial donation, at Colorism Healing on Cash App and Venmo. And also, I'll be letting y'all know when Patreon is fully functioning. And then see me again tomorrow. Come back tomorrow for the self-care follow-up, right? So we're going to talk about more practical, tangible tasks, activities that we can do as part of our healing process. So right now, this week, we're kind of talking about what it means, how to define it, what it looks like, how it feels, right? Next week, we're going to get into the more concrete behaviors and habits that we can form to support our healing, right? Your homework is to describe healing for yourself. How does it feel to you? What does it look like, sound like? And this allows you to recognize and celebrate your growth, right? So in order to gauge for yourself where you are in your healing journey, you have to know the signs for yourself. So for me, I said it's about how peaceful I feel. The more days where I feel at peace, the more I know I'm growing, the more I know I am on that healing journey, right? And then your affirmation. It's a few things, so I'm going to say it slowly. First, I have everything I need to begin my healing journey. You have everything you need to begin your healing journey. Second, I am divinely supported on my healing journey. Yes, you are. You are divinely supported on your healing journey. You are not in the struggle alone. 3, my healing is up to me. I take full responsibility for my own healing. So it's not the job of our spouse or our significant other or our parents or our friends or even the society or the culture to make us feel better with ourselves and about ourselves. We have to take responsibility for our own healing. And then lastly, this is probably my favorite. No matter what my circumstances are, My healing is within my power. No matter what my circumstances are, my healing is within my power. So remember that you are powerful, recognize your power, and use that to build yourself back up from whatever generational traumas you might be experiencing. Thank you all for talking with me about healing. As the name of my work suggests, Colorism Healing, the healing part to me has to be just as important as whatever I say about colorism. And I hope that anything that I read from the comments that I've shared from the audience and from some of my followers to any of my own experience that I've shared, I hope some of it, if not all of it, has been helpful and edifying and encouraging to you. And I will see you all, same place, same time, next week. Bye.